Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Libra, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of August 2024. I hope you're well. And let me extend my gratitude to you for waiting for me. Those of you who have, while I was getting myself moved, you are appreciated and seen. Thank you very much. Anywho, what do I have to tell you? There will be an extended at the end as per usual. The link for that will be in the description box. You can access it on Vimeo, or you can come join my private community, the Order of the Phoenix, over on the Circle platform. Like I said, information for both is in the description box, so if that's something that's of interest to you, you can check that out. Right, let's get straight in. Can I have 3 cards for Libra? Oh, there's the first one. It's the Lovers. Let me just get that off the floor. And flip the camera so you can see what I'm looking at. We have the Lovers card. What about current energy, please, for Libra? Ooh, we have the 7 of Cups and the 4 of Swords, which is very interesting because that kind of tallies in with the meditation that I did before I started your reading. Let's just pop that there. And what's coming towards Libra, please, for August? What do they need to know for August? 7 of Swords in reverse. Very interesting outcome. We have the Temperance card at the bottom of the deck. I'm just going to pop it there. And let's get some clarifiers out. But this is quite interesting. So if I can just tie in the meditation that I did so you understand what I'm talking about. It was very subtle, actually. There wasn't very much going on, apart from the fact that I just felt myself moving from side to side and just looking at stuff. And there wasn't really anything to see for me. But in terms of the movement, it's like slow movements, which is interesting because I'm actually recording this ahead of the what is it? It's the Mars-Uranus conjunction, and as we know, whenever Uranus is involved, things don't tend to be slow and circumspect. They tend to be quite sudden and thrilling and exhilarating and whatnot. So there's an assumption here by me, and this may or may not be borne out by the cards, but certainly this is how I feel intuitively, that the events of July lead to of course lead to a kind of slowing down in August, where you are practicing that Libran trait of being discerning and checking that everything is what you think it is. Now, the reason that I've just gone of course is because Mercury will be in retrograde right from the beginning of August. Actually, we're teetering on the edge of the shadow period as I record this. It'll be happening in the next week or so. And essentially the whole of August is actually spent within that retrograde energy, and I think Mars goes retrograde at some point in that month as well. Where retrograde motion is the defining feature of the astrology, we are called to stop pushing forward so hard, but instead look at what we have done, what we have created, whether it fits the bill for what it was that we were trying to do, whether we have made mistakes, whether we can rectify those mistakes, or whether we can just simply learn from them. You know, the 7 of Cups and the 4 of Swords does not feel like the energies are particularly clear. But they suggest that the best way that you can support yourself is by taking care of yourself, but slowing down, meditating on things, taking a break, taking a step back and assessing what's sitting in front of you. Anyway, let me get some clarifiers on the table and we'll see what else is going on here. Tell me about this Lovers card. Thank you. We have the Emperor, and we have the 2 of Swords. Interesting. Because there's a power dynamic playing out there, and that may be between, you know, you and another person, but it also might be between the 2 parts of you that are trying to control but not really knowing what it is that you want to control, because forces seem to be at work that are outside of your control, and it's that trying to weigh up what is yours to control and what is not. Let me get some more clarifiers out before I keep going off on side quests with things. But tell me about the 7 of Cups and the 4 of Swords, please. Thank you. We have the Hanged Man. Excellent. Very much in keeping with what we've seen. And we've seen the Fool in reverse. Now I'm going to pull one more card here because I think that this is important. Whoa. We have the Three of Swords. Okay, there's definitely a sense of not wanting to repeat patterns, and I feel like the energies towards the end of July and into August are all about identifying those patterns, identifying the cycles, and seeing which ones you want to move forward with and which ones you don't. Now, the Seven of Swords at the end, let's just get some clarifiers for that. Tell me about that. There we go. So we have the Tower, which, to be honest, isn't really that much of a surprise. And the Six of Swords in reverse, very much in keeping with going back to something. I feel like there is the likelihood of some revelations coming up, you know, things coming to light that aren't that isn't new information coming to you, but more in the nature of you putting things together in a way that you haven't done before. Just looking at this broad overview before we go any further, and I'm going to have to, fiddle with my lighter because I always need something to fiddle with while I'm reading. What's interesting to me is that you've had every single card that represents Aries. Now, Aries gives us Mars. There's also, you know, there's a nod to Scorpio here too, because Aries and Scorpio have both been at various times rulers of Mars. That's how this card comes to mean Aries and Scorpio at the same time, right? So we've got that. I tend to just sort of sit with that as Scorpio, to be honest. But you've got the Emperor, which is Aries. You've got the Fool, which is Aries. You've got the Queen of Wands, which is Aries. And the sign before Aries is Pisces. Now, if there was ever going to be a point where you did not initiate, you know, ad nauseum, the same pattern over and over again, right? If there was a point where you could break the cycle, it would be here in Pisces, and everything that Pisces represents, which is dissolution and breaking down of old patterns, old cycles and whatnot. There's a lot going on here, Libra, and as we would expect, because the South Node's been in your sign for over a year now, and towards the end of this year it will be shifting into Virgo, actually. So everything runs in cycles, right? But the beginning and the end of any particular transition seem to pack the biggest punches. Now, you've still got 4 months till the end of the year, so the pressure is building to make the changes that this nodal position has brought in for you, right? So the South Node is about releasing what no longer serves you, but it's about balancing the spiritual lessons of what you have already been taught, the mistakes that you've made, you know, whether they're errors of judgment, errors of discernment, whatever, in order to move forwards from a place of wisdom. Now, the Queen of Wands at the bottom here and the Temperance card here, both fire energy, because we've got Sagittarius over there and we've got Aries over here, feel like they are pointing towards this this idea of there being an opportunity for great healing this month, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it would be too comfortable at the same time, but not unbearable. I want to make that very clear. It's not an unbearable energy. It's just that kind of like, oh God, I don't like it, but it is what it is, right? And really leaning into that, it is what it is, but I can change this and I can control that and whatever. So the Lovers card here, if we start off in your recent past, is about often conscious co-creation. Now, that can spread off in a myriad of different ways for you, Libra, because with the South Node being in your sign, there's a question of what it is that you have consciously co-created with other people, and whether that was something that you actually really wanted, or whether it was something that you went along with, or was it something that was of the nature of codependence? Is it something that you were going along with because it was easier than confronting the other stuff? You know, it's a Gemini card there, and Jupiter is in Gemini, so there is a sense of Gemini characteristics, Gemini issues being expanded within your personal life. And those would be communication, the way that your mind works, your sociability. These are actually quite Libran concepts too, right? But it's supportive. The thing that I'm getting at here is there seems to be a big sense of you having created something and it wasn't necessarily what you thought it would be, right? And I feel like you've been wrestling with this for the last year or so anyway. But now we're arriving at a point where you are becoming aware that there is power for you to wield, but you've been wielding it in a way that has been essentially fairly non-committal, right? It's not really been pushing forwards what it is that you want, that is right for you. Dare I say it, in some ways, Libra, you have not been showing up authentically. And the desire to show up authentically has probably been missing too. But that's changed of late. It's changed recently, and it's becoming something else. And now you do want to exert that power. You do want to exert that autonomy over your own existence. But it's knowing how the fuck you're supposed to do it. This Two of Swords, it's kind of locked in an impossible choice, is often the way that this card is interpreted, right? It's got somebody here who is blindfolded, who's needing to make a decision between the two swords, right? So this puts it thoroughly in the realm of the mental up here. And the received wisdom of this card is that the two swords are effectively identical. There is nothing to choose between them, but we know that there is always a choice. And so for me, this card speaks more to a kind of mental gymnastics that we have performed on ourselves, where we have told ourselves there is no movement forwards. These swords are essentially identical. We're just going to sit here and hope that everything's fine, because at least we're balanced, and we like to be balanced. But when you've got the moon at the back and you've got the water at the back, and these are both symbols of both, emotion and intuition, and they are obscured from your vision, whatever wisdom it is that they would be able to impart is being, dare I say it, subconsciously ignored in favour of keeping the balance. Now, the Lovers card also talks about balance, and I feel like there's probably shades of balance within the Emperor, because the Emperor is balancing all of the duties that he holds. It's not quite as simple as saying you have been feeling like it is time for a change, because I do think that a lot of things have changed around you. But the root of this really is coming down to this: am I exercising all of the power that I have at my disposal? Am I exercising it wisely? Is it taking me towards that, where I want to go? Well, the question is possibly for you, Libra, like, where is it that you want to go? Because the changes that have happened, if they've been thrust upon you by the universe, then they've asked for a response from you, and I assume for the most part that most of you have responded. But if there are changes that you've been trying to make in your within your own environment, and they're still not quite right, it's a question of what needs to go, what needs to stay. Where do I need to be more forceful? Where do I need to withdraw? What are the consequences of my actions, in a positive and a negative light? And how do I take responsibility for those consequences in a way that is meaningful, that allows me to grow? And it's like the Two of Swords is you coming up against this impasse inside your head, where it's like, well, fucking hell, I try to do this and I try to do that and I try to do the other thing, and it just doesn't feel like I'm in that slipstream with the universe in the way that I know is possible for me to experience. Now, there's quite a lot about this that is quite vague. You've got to take this as it resonates to you, and I realise that I'm not being specific exactly with situations, but I would imagine there's quite a lot to do with relationships. And even as I'm recording today, we're talking, or the planets are talking to each other quite a lot about power dynamics within relationships, because we've got this Venus square Pluto thing going on at the moment. But wherever the Queen of Wands shows up, like, she wants to be visible. But there's something quite circumspect about queens versus, it's quite passive energy versus the more active energy of the kings, which is saying, like, why do I do the things that I do? What am I trying to achieve? Where am I trying to go? Am I exerting energy in the right direction? And if you keep coming up against this Two of Swords over and over again, it's like, where is the blind spot in my head? What is it that is stopping me from being entirely in the moment, feeling like I'm in charge, feeling like I have autonomy over my own existence, like I am a sovereign spirit? And then by extension, how can I work with the energies of the universe to co-create the kind of existence that I want? Like, it feels like these big themes have been rolling around for you, Libra, for quite a long time. And it's this Two of Swords that seems to be blocking everything. Now, that in some ways is really good, because it puts it within your ball court, as it were, right? It's minor arcana. It's something to do with the way that your brain is processing information. And, there may be all sorts of self-limiting beliefs that have, come to forge this particular thing. It might be simply your self-limiting beliefs, full stop. But it's time to shake free from whatever it is that the Two of Swords represents for you, to move forwards more cleanly. Now, this Three of Swords over here feels a little bit uncomfortable, right? Well, it's just an uncomfortable card. Nobody enjoys it when the Three of Swords comes up. But in some ways, I think that this is exceedingly positive for you, because we've got consecutive cards showing up on the table, right? We've got the Two of Swords, right? The mental blind spot, perhaps the mental subconscious gymnastics. We have the Three of Swords over here, which for me is the point where the emotions and the mind meet and a truth is revealed that we did not see before. Now, generally, it's uncomfortable, because in the light of these revelations, what tends to happen is that our entire worldview changes. But we also have the Four of Swords here, which is saying it's okay. Like, it's momentary, it's fleeting, because what happens from here is that we can rest, we can take a step back, we can allow ourselves to heal from this place of, I would say, almost like a place of detachment. But what's really important is the historic aspect of whatever this is. Like, you seem to be detached in time and space from whatever the Three of Swords is. It's not like losing a job or breaking up with a partner or any of these sorts of things. It's more like, oh, I see the consequences of my actions. I see why, behavior A plus behavior B with, subconscious motivation number one down there would come together to make me behave in a certain way or respond to others in a certain way that does not take me forwards, does not get me closer to the kind of life that I want, that I haven't yet identified. There's a mess of emotions in here that are kind of clouding the issue, and it's the emotions that have created the need for mental gymnastics, the need for subconscious resistance. And what seems to be happening here is, with the revelations and then the mental progression that follows on from that, which is really interesting, we're starting to see perhaps how much of a mess our emotional space has been. Now, I'm not telling you this in the nature of criticism or anything like that, Libra, because I don't think there's a person alive who can't look back at old situations and say, I would do that differently. Like, I would behave differently. I would process that information differently. My responses would be different. And if there are people who say, well, I wouldn't do anything differently, then the chances are that they didn't really learn from that situation what they were supposed to, right? Each one of these examples that we have that we can look back on from our own past, and even if we kind of die a little bit inside or we cringe a little bit about the way that we responded to something, the fact that we know that we would do it differently now means that we have grown, we have progressed, we have a wisdom that we did not have at that point. But it's necessary to understand the mess of emotions that was sitting behind that caused the particular way of thinking that created a particular response, So this Seven of Cups feels more like the revelation, right? Oh, I see how I wasn't thinking straight. I see how my emotions clouded everything. I see this, that, and the other. And the Four of Swords is that objective ability to be able to process it all. Like I said, there seems to be this distance between what you're perceiving and where you are right now, but it does feel like it's taking up an awful lot of your mental bandwidth at the moment. The Hanged Man down here, though, is an absolute saviour for you. Like I said, this Pisces energy of dissolution and completion and seeing things from a totally different perspective than we saw them before. The Hanged Man is an opportunity to shift our perspective into one that is more enlightened. It is also a card of passivity, right? Which is interesting because a lot of the thrust of what you seem to want to do is move forwards, but the universe is saying, yeah, sometimes you've got to stew in your own soup for a little bit till you understand what it is that has occurred. See, the Emperor would always want to move forwards, although interestingly, he's got that kind of static presentation, right, because he's overseeing everything. The Queen of Wands always looks to me like she's about, something's just caught her eye over there, and as soon as she's finished with what she's doing here, she's going over to investigate what that thing is. But both of them sitting, the Fool would just want to drift into a new cycle, right? He's innocent, he is naive, he is the Fool. But whatever new cycle that you were, a different version of you might have been preparing to drift into, your position as the keeper of the South Node for where we are right now is saying, nah, hang on, we just got to sit back, we've got to wait. Like, we're not going to drift into a new cycle. Any new movement that happens has to happen deliberately, consciously, mindfully, and not be motivated by fears, frustrations, messy emotions, ignoring intuition, any of these kind of things. Like, it's got to be clear. And the Three of Swords, I think, although it's an uncomfortable energy, ultimately it always clears the deck for a better understanding of self and, by extension, a better understanding of other people. Now, I think that the dynamics between you and people are important, but I think that they've probably had a little bit too much prominence up until this point, because what it's stopped you doing is considering the relationship that you have with yourself and the extent to which that is then reflected back to you, the relationships that you have with other people. I mean, this is a month of like a true interest. Well, it's not even a month. It's a period of time that is truly introspective, because you might have all sorts of things going on outside of you. The normal day-to-day, dross that we end up having to do, like going to work, cleaning your fucking bathroom, things like that. But there's something really monumental that is shifting within you here that isn't ready to be reflected back to you in your external life. Which is to say that there are things about the way that you process information, that you show up, that you relate to yourself, that need to be shifted before you can start moving forwards. Because the worst thing that could happen would be that you threw yourself into something new here before you've finished cleaning house. Let's put it that way, right? So when we move into your energy for August, and we have this Seven of Swords in reverse. I actually really, really like this because it feels like this is all building on the energies of over here, right? We've got truths that are being revealed, and it's specifically around the repetition of patterns that have existed in your life. Like, what's the theme here? What's the pattern? What happens over and over again? You know, what is it that sidles into your life, each time looking slightly different, but inevitably ending in the same way? And the same way is going to be with you feeling exhausted, you feeling like you don't have any control over different areas of your life, you feeling like you've perhaps been taken for granted, you feeling like you're more emotionally invested in something than everybody else is, and you then suffer accordingly. Because the Seven of Swords for me is a revelation of truth. That's what we've got going on here. So it's a revelation of truth, but it is profound. When the Seven of Swords shows up in the upright, we talk about deceit. We talk about, duplicitous behaviour, underhand things. I mean, it's not called the Thief card for no reason. And some people will interpret that as there being somebody in your midst who is not showing up truthfully, right? There are lies, there's deceit, there's something being hidden from you. But the nature of the cards that have shown up so far, and the way that this seems to be so profoundly internal for you, and we've already spoken about mental gymnastics and the things that you don't allow yourself to see about yourself, right? Those blind spots that have been plaguing you for your entire life. The Seven of Swords comes to mean, for me, the way that we deceive ourselves. Now, we don't do this out of a sense of malice or anything like that. We do this in order to survive, because at various points in our growth cycle, the ego can become very brittle. And when the ego starts to feel like just any little bit of tension anywhere will make it snap, then it will start to weave stories that aren't really true. Or it will, it'll take a big sponge and it will just like wash all the paint off the wall. So, it will have said something at some point and now it's just a big black smeary mess, and we don't even need to look at that very much. It's not a problem, we're fine, we're doing our thing over here. The truth was written on that wall. But whatever your subconscious has done, it's obscured it, it's obfuscated it, so now that it cannot be seen by you. This would be the interpretation for the Seven of Swords for me, the one that I go with most often. To see it show up in reverse for August, accompanied by both the Tower and the Six of Swords in reverse, which is a card that generally speaks to a return to something. What's the card that is conspicuous by its absence here on the table? I'll tell you. We have the Two of Swords in the upright, we have the Three of Swords in the upright, we have the Four of Swords in the upright. And then when we come over here, we have the Seven of Swords in reverse, and we have the Six of Swords in reverse. Like, each one of these undoing so that we can return back to a space. The card that is missing, notable by its absence, is the Five of Swords. The Five of Swords speaks to self-sabotage. It speaks to wonky thought patterns that take you off on cognitive loops. It can talk about all sorts of things. It can talk about pain and trauma. It talks about the ways that we sabotage ourselves and think that we're doing the right thing. The mental gymnastics that I was talking about. August, with these planets that are in retrograde, seems to me to be suggesting that we are unravelling things. We're in pursuit of a truth that has up until this point eluded us, and it's a truth that's in here. It's not a truth that can be issued from the mouth of someone else, right? It's something that you have to happen across. And it feels like this Tower energy is giving it a significance. It's giving it a kind of energy that is going to change everything. You know, there are periods in life where you can be, you know, absolutely sick as a dog about what your life is and how it's playing out. And you decide that you need a change. And so you look around in your life and you go, what's wrong? And it's like, well, I fucking hate my job. So I'll get a different job. Maybe my car's really shit. I hate the look of my car. I hate driving my car. It's like wrestling a bear trying to get the work done. I'll replace my car. Maybe it's my partner. Maybe I don't really like my partner. Maybe it's time for me to be single for a little bit. You know, maybe I just don't even like where I live. Maybe I need to move. You can change each one of these things outside of you, and you will still possibly, if you know this is the situation that's going underneath, you will still be as unhappy as you were when you were in the other situations, because wherever you go, there you are. It's really funny. Like at the point where Saturn turned retrograde, and I didn't know because I'm so fucking out of the loop with the astrology at the moment because I've been moving house and whatnot. On the very day that Saturn turned retrograde, I was like, work. And I was like, why is it still so stressful, the thought of all the work that I have to do? And I'm talking about, you know, for this, Scorched Earth. I put so much effort into trying to make it smooth, you know, what is it that needs to change? And I looked at my partner and I said, it's me. It's like everything was chaotic where I was, now everything's chaotic here. Like the common denominator is me. So wherever you go, there you are. Like there's something about the way that I do things that needs to change. There's something about the way that I think about things that needs to change. And I went, oh, this feels canny Saturn, like actually Saturn in retrograde. And then I looked up the chart, the planetary positions for the day, and it was indeed the day that Saturn went into retrograde. It can be frustrating when retrograde energy starts to play on you, but it really is that stitch in time saves nine. You know, you spend a month really looking for a truth that has been hitherto completely obscured from your vision. And the way that you can bounce forwards once the planets start with their, you know, with their forward motion again, 9 times faster than you would have been if you carried on trudging through the mud. And this is particularly true for you with that. I keep going on about it, but the South Node being in your sign, there are but 4 months of this left. And when it shifts into the Virgo Pisces axis, like it will take the pressure off you. It will. And it will feel better. But that's not going to happen by itself. It happens because of the work that you do whilst your sign is being highlighted as needing some work. And, you know, we spoke last year when the South Node moved into your sign, we spoke about how it was highlighting relationship dynamics, you know, what you've given away, what you've taken possibly from other people, you know, the way that you have managed, the way that you have related, the way that you have processed, all of these things now coming up for a kind of reevaluation, so that you could take what was spiritual and meaningful, and that's generally what that is found in the places where you recognize the mistakes that you've made and then take responsibility for those and adjust accordingly. Because by the end of the year, these are things that we would hope would be settled, right? And that you are not being thwarted from moving forwards, not being halted in your tracks, but in fact given the green light to move forwards with this wiser, more circumspect, more discerning eye that you have, that isn't being agitated by emotional trauma, emotional baggage, a lack of emotional responsibility in some cases, that is actually steering the ship from back there. It's not your conscious mind, it's your subconscious mind. So what we have here is a revelation of truths, and despite the fact that the Tower is here, I do feel like this is slow. The Tower is here because it changes everything. Remember, like, people get very scared by the Tower, but actually all it is the universe redirecting you. And sometimes that can be sudden and shocking and very unpleasant. But sometimes it can be actually thrilling and exhilarating. Yeah, actually, like of the nature of Uranus, as we were talking about right at the beginning of the video there. What it's saying is you're about to turn a corner, Libra. But in order to recognize that there's a corner there to turn, and the universe will be shoving you off that way, 90 degrees from where you thought you were going, there's a certain amount of self-truth that needs to be excavated and pulled out from your past. This is going back. This is seeing the truth. This is seeing the truth of a situation, or perhaps a multitude of situations, which then pulls down towers that you have created unwittingly, with no intention whatsoever, at least not conscious intention, that essentially has been acting as the roadblock for the autonomy that you've been looking for. Now, you can see where the healing aspect of this comes in with the Temperance card. For some of you, there will be some nudges from the universe that help this along. I'm thinking, well, there's a lot of the nature of Mercury retrograde, right? So everything that Mercury rules, which is communication and transport and all these sorts of things, right? Your technology might brick itself. Your car might brick itself. These are all of the nature of Mercury retrogrades. These are things, but it's about revisiting. Mercury rules intelligence. It rules the way that you process information. It's how open to information you are, full stop. It feels like a levelling up, but it's a kind of levelling up that's basically a ball ache, is the way that I would put it. You shouldn't expect any movement forwards, because nothing is going to support forward motion, and I'm not just talking about Mercury retrograde. Interesting, if you've already started something, Mercury retrograde is a really good time for completing something that you've already started, but it's not a time for initiation. This is saying there's still work to be done, there's still things to be seen. And to use the example that I referred to earlier, where there's a certain amount of dissatisfaction with your life and there's a feeling that things need to change. When things shift internally, sometimes nothing outside of you needs to change. It's just a fresh set of eyes that you use to look at these. You see things that you did not see before. It's like change is as good as a holiday, right? This is really interesting. Right, I'm going to go over to the extended now, so if you'd like to join me over there, you're very welcome to do so. If not, no shade, not a problem at all. I would just hold off on getting excited about initiating anything new between now and the end of August, because in all likelihood it's not going to take off. And maybe that's part of what you're supposed to see, right? It's not going to take off, it's not going to grow, it's not going to do its thing. And maybe within there is the frustration and whatnot that gives you the ability to access the truth. But I think it's far more likely that it's epiphany after epiphany after epiphany after epiphany, and they smart a little bit, but once seen, they cannot be unseen. And it gives you a different set of tools to work with moving forwards, and these tools are much more useful to you than the ones that you have had. So you just got to keep breathing through it. Yeah, just keep breathing. This too shall pass, and all of that. Can't tell you how many times I said that to myself when my twins were babies. Like fucking 4 o'clock in the morning, feeding. And I'm like, I am dead. And I'm like, no, this too shall pass. There will come a point where this will just be a memory and it's fine. I just got to keep ploughing through. And it's the same with personal work as well. When we're balls deep in stuff, sometimes it's difficult to imagine that there will ever be a point where we can be content with what we are. And that I think, actually is the lie that we tell ourselves. It's the lie that justifies the mental gymnastics. It's the lie that justifies keeping everything outside of our conscious awareness, right? Allowing us to project onto other people or, you know, whatnot. Right? True freedom comes through accountability, a responsibility. And that's what this period is all about for you. And it doesn't have to be conspicuous and public. You know, I think this is all conversations with yourself. Alright, I'm going to leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.